Morning, everyone. Good morning. Let's start with a quick word of prayer. And Lord, thank you this day for bringing us here again today. Thank you for these men that came out to listen to Mike, and thank you for Mike for being so willing to just share his story. So Lord, be honored in this room today. Be with those that are not here today, maybe gone on vacations. Also, just keep us all safe on the roads. Be with our families this weekend. So forgive us for our sins. We ask this in Jesus' name, amen. So we got a couple of quick things. Actually, more than that, but I'm going to open with a joke today. I have to tell it today because I'm going to forget by next month. So we got to tell it today. This is great for you golfers. So, 3 guys go golfing. One is Moses, one is Jesus, and one is an old guy. Moses steps up first, boom, hits it down the fairway, hooks, lands in the pond. Jesus gets up, bam, down the fairway, lands in the pond. The old guy gets up, hits a worm burner, goes right in the pond, and all of a sudden an alligator grabs his ball and spits it back out on the fairway. A bird comes along, picks up the ball, goes up the fairway, drops it in the cup. Jesus turns and looks and he goes, "Nice shot, Dad." I thought you golfers in the room would like that. So, yeah, that was too good to be, and I would have forgot that one by August. So before we get started, Joni, you may look at your tables. There's some fundraising stuff. Joni's going to quick stand up here and talk about a fundraiser that's going on in August, the second Saturday in August. Second Sunday in August, sorry. So, Joni, step on up.
Hey, Joni.
Hi, Joni.
Hello, good morning. One of the girls that works here, this fundraiser is for her daughter. She needs a kidney transplant soon. Like next 6 months soon? Sorry.
You're good.
Come on.
We are doing a fundraiser next month, August 17th. We have live bands coming out. We're gonna do auctions, donations, bake sale, anything we can think of. Next month I'm gonna hit you guys up for donations, so be ready. If you're not gonna be here next month, you can, and wanna donate today, you can give me or Summer the money. We got a jar up by the register. We want this to be the biggest fundraiser ever.
Come on.
She is about to be 13. Her kidney function is at 12%. She's finishing up all the tests to be able to be put on the transplant list, which could take forever.
Keep going. You're good. You're good.
Her and her sister are like the rarest set of twins that can be with like a 0.01 fatality rate. She was born dead for 9 minutes, and that's where all of her problems stem from. She had brain bleeds. It was something like their cords were braided together and then like knotted and tied a couple different times. Ashley was in the hospital for 10 weeks before they had them to avoid all this, and it didn't help. She loved to play softball. She tries her hardest, fishing, all that kind of stuff. She's scared to death. Told her doctor she doesn't think she's gonna get a kidney in time. So we're just trying to help them because the insurance that they have will cover the transplant, but once she has the transplant, she'll be considered healthy. So she will lose her sick kids medical insurance. So everything after that is not paid for. Dad just got insurance, but it won't cover very much of it. And she has to be on 8 or 9 different medications for the rest of her life. She can't, her favorite thing is like Chinese buffets. Once she has the transplant, she can't do buffets or potlucks or picnics or anything like that. No processed foods. So we're trying to get her all set. We're sending them to the buffet before this happens, and we're trying to make sure that Ashley can take the time off. She has to be in the hospital for 2 weeks, and then she has to be off school for 3 months. So.
Awesome. We'll let that Hey, good morning again, everybody, and thanks again thanks for coming out. Our speaker today is Mike VanLaan. Did I say that right?
You bet.
Okay, because there's so many different ways to say
There are.
names. Yes, from East Kentwood. Most of you have read his bio either on Facebook and or in the the Indicator, and or maybe you've seen the emails. So, but you can tell you this: he was accepted at three of the four of the five academies. The only one he didn't get accepted to was a Naval Academy, but West Point, the Air Force Academy, it's just crazy. His bio is just unbelievable. So what he doesn't talk about here, I have it written down, but we'll let Mike talk about it. But if he forgets something, I got him covered here. So how about a nice round of applause for Mike here today?
I might walk around a little bit. Is that okay? I'm going to challenge the camera guy. All right. So first of all, I'm just a little kid from Kentwood that God has blessed, and that's really the bottom line of my story. But when Cal and I were sitting at a Fellowship of Christian Athletes luncheon, and he tossed out there unexpectedly, "Hey, if I ever needed a speaker, would you be willing to help me out?" And so I said yes, and I said yes because of this finger. So I don't usually give people a finger, but okay. So in January of this year, this really isn't what I'm talking about, but I just wanted to let you know why I'm here. In January of this year, my wife and I were on a cruise. We were on the island of Bonaire, Caribbean island in Southern Caribbean, and we were going to do some cave exploring, a guided tour. And so we were in this underground cave, descended vertically down the ladder into the cave. The guide had gone down. It's dark in the cave. The guide was to my right, so I'm the first one down. It's dark. There's no lights on. So I'm down at the bottom of the ladder. The guide's here. I step off this way, and the ledge that the ladder goes down had ended. So I did a free fall vertically for 10 feet in a dark cave in Bonaire, and probably should be dead because it was rock. And I landed. My hand broke the fall. So this hand's a little mangled. I ended up with stitches. I lost just a little tip of the finger here. Had to go to the hospital in Bonaire. But we were with my brother-in-law and my sister. My brother-in-law is a retired Grand Rapids firefighter. And so he did a little bit of inertial first aid and made sure I was still coherent. But anyway, as we're leaving the cave then, and we're walking back to the guide's vehicle, he's going to take us back to the ship. The thought that went through my head was, okay, God didn't allow me to die. What does he have in mind for me? What's my purpose now? Yeah, I hope it's not having to be a missionary in Africa. So I was in shock a little bit still, and so that's just a weird thought to have. But then as I processed it later, as the shock wore off and stuff, I thought I just need to be open to what God's calling me to do now with my life. And it's been a while since I've been in front of a group talking. You asked me if I do that, and it's probably been 20 years since I've been in front of a group. Because I am naturally, believe it or not, naturally shy. And but being a fighter pilot in the Air Force will take care of shyness because it's a very robust group and very competitive, and yeah, you can't survive it if you're a shy person. So anyway, that's my lead in. I was telling these guys here, I was at Hope College last night until 10 o'clock officiating 7-on-7 high school football. So I might be a little bit low on energy because I got home at 11 and I went to bed and got up and made it to Grant this morning. But what I want to talk about primarily, and I'm not going to talk for long, I'm going to leave a little bit more time for questions and answers because usually people want to know about dropping bombs and shooting guns and that sort of stuff out of an airplane. And I don't really have a good Christian talk about that. So, but I am willing to address those questions and talk about that. And pretty much, you'll probably hear this often, but I've really been open to what God's plan is for me, and I've really been open to and been thankful for the blessings that I've had. I don't have a strong conversion story. I grew up in a Christian church and a Christian family, and so I always had the faith with me. And but if you want to ask me later about when did I really develop strong faith, that would be in Enid, Oklahoma. Okay, but that's not my story today. But you can ask me later if you want to know that. I was 23 years old when somebody asked me a question that was worth answering. But what I want to primarily address today is Christian leadership. So everybody in this room is a leader. We're all different. So we're all different types of leaders. So I'm not going to give you the answer on what to do. I'm not going to give a cookbook approach to it. But let's just start with looking at what Jesus did. Jesus picked 12 disciples. One was a bad choice. We know that. Okay. My wife and I were talking about that this morning, actually, at 5 in the morning. Okay, my wife's an early riser. Like, why did Jesus pick Judas? Did he know? Okay, we don't need to know the answer to that question, all right? But I imagine he did know what was going to happen. But anyway, so the other 11, if you look at the personalities of those guys, they're different, all right? I identify most with Peter, all right? I'm the guy that's going to run to the tomb. We're going to race. I'm going to win, okay? I'm competitive. That's just what we're going to do. And I'm impulsive, all right? That's how Peter was. John, on the other hand, was not. He's your relationship guy. And you can go through the whole 12. You can Google it online. You can find it, all right? But my point is that Jesus, and these guys were all the future leaders of the early Christian church. He picked leaders, and they're all different. So you don't have to be like me. I don't have to be like you. God made each of us in our own way. So what I'm going to share, hopefully, are just some principles that can be applied. And this doesn't directly relate to flying airplanes, and I know that was the attraction or whatever, but my thing is that I ended up unexpectedly being the commander of the 172nd Fighter Squadron, which is part of the Battle Creek Air National Guard in Battle Creek, obviously. So we were flying A-10s, and our unit had crashed 2 A-10s. At that point in my career, I had left active duty. I had settled down that all I wanted to do was get my 20 years in, get my retirement, finish flying as a pilot. I didn't want to do any of the extra stuff to get promoted or anything like that. We, both A-10 accidents, we lost the airplane, we lost the pilot. The second one, well, the first one happened in Nevada when we were deployed. The second one happened in Texas when we were deployed. The second one was my best friend in the unit. He had been at the house. My kids knew him. It was probably the first death that my kids had experienced from somebody that they knew. Okay, and he was my age, and so I knew in my heart that, in my mind, that our A-10 unit wasn't doing things the right way. And the fact is, we lost those airplanes because we weren't doing things the right way. So on a Friday night, after the 2 accidents, shortly after the 2 accidents, we were all gathered in the officers' club and sitting there, and I was complaining about how bad the unit was, and that. And we had an Air Force advisor who was a couple ranks ahead of me, and he said, "Mike, you're either part of the problem or you're part of the solution." And so, yeah, okay, jerk, So I went home and dwelled on that. The next week, they opened up, they said, anybody that wants, so we also had, as a result of those 2 accidents, we had a leadership vacuum. We had people that got fired. We had people that decided to retire. They were retirement age. And we have people that just left the unit and decided to just leave the military. Because they were part of the problem, and they were going to get blamed for the accidents. And so anyway, we had a huge vacancy. I was not the right rank. I wasn't a high enough rank yet to be the commander, but I thought, well, I'll throw my hat in because I'd rather be part of the solution than be part of the problem. And so I did. I unexpectedly got the job, and I had done some leadership. I had worked at Pine Ridge Christian Hospital and managed a large department there, so I had some management and leadership experience. But this is really where I grew as a leader and had to exercise myself. So I'm taking over a unit that just crashed 2 airplanes, just killed 2 pilots, and we weren't doing things the right way, and most of us knew it. So we had to change. So fortunately, I had some things to fall back on. I'm going to grab this. So I didn't have this up on my office at the time because I didn't know it, but I did have it in my head. So there were some leadership principles that I had established for myself, and these, I call them life principles. That's maybe a better way to look at it, is life principles. Think about, and these can be different for everybody. They should be different for everybody. But this is over probably the first 35 years of my life that these were established. So the first one is to serve with excellence. Second one is do the right thing. It keeps you from doing the wrong thing. That's primarily what I want to talk about today. And the third one came late in my life, celebrate your victories. I finally had somebody tell me that I was way too serious and I didn't celebrate victories enough. And you need to enjoy life a little bit more, and God wants it that way. And so we had a nice little discussion on that. So that one got added last. So do the right thing. It keeps you from doing the wrong thing. And it's based on Proverbs 10, verse 9. Whoever walks in integrity walks securely, but whoever takes crooked paths will be found out. And my kids, without me asking, at one time said, Dad, when you die, there's going to be one word on your tombstone. That word's going to be integrity. That was a huge compliment. So that tells me that I'm probably walking that way in my life every day. And that would be the challenge. So do the right thing. It keeps you from doing the wrong thing. So when I became commander of the unit, the right thing was the hard thing. I had to look at somebody and say, you can no longer fly the A-10. Okay, you're not good enough. In my mind, you're done. And these are guys that I've flown with. These are guys that maybe were friends. So I had to do that. A couple guys, fortunately, were old enough to retire. I had to basically talk them into retirement, saying your time's done. You've had a great career. You can stay in the unit as you want, but you're not going to fly under my command because we're not going to crash another A-10, and I'm only going to take the best guys. The other thing I had to do is I had to take the group of guys that were left, and I had to say, we're all at ground zero. None of us are qualified in the airplane. I'm bringing in active duty instructors, and we're all going to get requalified in every qualification we have. So I was talking to the instructor pilots, the evaluator pilots, everybody at the highest level, myself included. Okay, very unpopular, all right? I'm going to tell the highest qualified pilot in the room that he's no longer qualified to fly the A-10. I'm going to bring in an active duty instructor. The Air National Guard doesn't like active duty instructors, all right? We're the Guard. We're not active duty. We're better, we're cooler. So right away, I had to make 2 hard decisions. We did. We let some people go. I lost a friend over it, but it was the right thing. I'd rather lose a friendship than to lose a friend. And you can't say for sure that if that guy would have continued to fly, he would have crashed an A-10. But I had to make those decisions. Again, I leaned heavily on serve with excellence. The serve with excellence part was bringing the A-10 instructor pilots in from active duty and bringing our qualification thing up to excellence. And then doing the right thing was having to have these meetings with guys, and I had to make some tough calls. Most of the guys understood. Most of the guys knew in their head that they were in over their qualification level. So fast forward, Well, my first meeting as commander was with the general in charge of the Air National Guard, and it was one of these meetings, another finger thing. Said, you have 1 year or we're shutting down Battle Creek. And I said, yes, sir. So I was with my boss, so it wasn't just me, but the two of us, we got basically pointed at by a general and got yelled at, and everything that had happened was our fault, even though we weren't in charge at the time. But we were both committed to that 1 year, fixing things. So a year later, a year and a half later, Battle Creek had an operational readiness inspection. In the military, that's back then, that was basically how your unit got graded on your ability to go to war. And so we had that. We received an outstanding, and we were the first flying unit in the Michigan Air National Guard to get an outstanding. So outstandings are rare. So we got an outstanding. That was our stamp of approval that we had made change. We had done things the right way. Okay, again, tough decisions, bringing things in. All right. A year after that, we won the Air National Guard Flying Unit of the Year of the whole country. A year after that, we went to war. What if I hadn't done that and we went to war? Now, you don't know when you take command. You know you have problems in an Air National Guard. You don't know that you're going to go to war in 2 years, all right? So one of the things you do when you go to war is you ask your pilots the night before, I want everybody to write a letter. You're going to write a letter to your wife, or if you're not married, you're going to write a letter to your parents. And that's your last letter. That's the letter that they're going to read that I'm going to send to them if you die during this, because we might have somebody die during this time. And you need to tell them that you love them. You need to tell them everything you need to tell them in that letter. And I'll keep that letter, I collect the letters, they're sealed, you get them back when you survive the war. I gave them all back. We didn't lose anybody. But that's how serious it is. And as commander, I'm responsible for those. I'm the guy that's going to call the wife or the parents or whatever. And I just needed to make sure that we were putting our best guys out there. And I wasn't sending anybody into combat that wasn't qualified in the airplane and wasn't ready. So again, I had to make the tough decisions. I call that Christian leadership. And some people might say that's a stretch. But I think as Christians, what we need to do is we need to do the right thing even if it's a hard thing. So we need to hold each other accountable. If you know that there's a guy in this room that's being challenged with something that they shouldn't be challenged with, do you have the courage? Are you able to do the right thing and talk to that person about them? Are you able to hold each other accountable? I'm hoping everybody has a male friend who can help hold them accountable, because we get tempted with things that are unique, and it doesn't do any good for my wife to talk to me about it. Okay, I have a handful of guys that have permission to talk to me about anything if they see me walking the wrong way. And I'm going to look at you right there. The younger generation, pornography is an issue. You better have some accountability for that, all right? For our generation, it was a different, pornography was in a different way back then, but it's so easy today. It's one of the things I worry about with my grandkids, all right? It's just an issue. Accountability. Do you have somebody walking alongside of you who's willing to do the right thing, the hard thing, and provide Christian leadership to you? And when I say we're all leaders, it might be as a husband, as a father, maybe in your business place. The other thing is, do the people you work with know you're a Christian based on your leadership style? Okay? The guys in the Guard knew I was a Christian. I don't have to be a Christian to be the commander of the unit, but it helped them to know that. So anyway, so my plaque here, and this hangs in my office today. So first of all, I'm retired. I retired from the military in 2003. Next month, that'll be 22 years of retirement from the military. That's how old I am. And so in a couple years, I will have been retired longer than I've served, which is scary. Makes me feel old. But this hangs in my office at the house now. And for a couple reasons. One is I want to look at it every day. Even though I'm no longer a military commander, I'm still a leader. I officiate high school and college football. I'm on a football crew. I'm a leader of the crew. I'm the trainer for new officials in the Grand Rapids area. And I'm a leader at church, and etc. Okay, so I still want to live by these principles. The other thing is if people come to my house, I want them to see this. Okay, maybe they'll ask a question. Maybe it'll open up a door. But do the right thing, it keeps them from doing the wrong thing. And I write, life is all about choices. When faced with a choice or a decision, choose the right thing to do, even if this is a more difficult choice, even if it costs you money or time or friendships. In the long run, doing the wrong thing will cost you more. Protect your integrity. And then whoever walks in integrity walks securely, but whoever takes crooked paths will be found out. Proverbs 10:9. So we're going to transition over a little bit. You said I have to be done by 7:50, right? Okay, so we have 20 minutes. I'm going to talk about flying a little bit now. Okay, we're going to get a little bit less serious. So I did bring some things just for conversation. I've been talking to a few people here. They have family members or people they know that also have flown fighters. Again, I'm blessed. My story with Cal, I told a little bit about that when we when we had breakfast earlier this week. I graduated from East Kentwood High School, kind of a shy kid, pretty smart, and pretty good football player. And the only thing, I was 18 years old. The only thing that was important to me, there were two things that were important to me. One is I wanted to play college football. And two, I needed to go someplace that didn't cost any money because my parents had no money for college. Okay? So I was open to anybody that could fit those two criteria. I didn't really care about much else. I'm 18 years old. And the Air Force Academy wanted me to play football for them. I had some other offers as well. And so I had plenty of choices to go where it was going to be free and I was going to be able to play football, and I ended up choosing Air Force. I got to the Air Force Academy freshman year football, freshman year academics, and the two didn't really go together real well. I'm flunking out, doing okay in football, flunking out on academics. And I go, well, I can either get kicked out of the academy for academics and not play football, or I can not play football and stay at the academy. So now I'm 19 years old and I have to make a decision. So my decision at 19 was I'm going to have to drop out of football. So I did. So I played 1 year of football and got my academics under control. Ended up graduating on the dean's list. My senior year, the last semester, I was cruising in academics, so I did play one season of intercollegiate rugby then, at that time in the spring. And but anyway, so also I wanted to be a dentist. That was my thing when I was 18. I wanted to be a dentist with these fat fingers and whatnot. And but God had a different plan for me. And so the Air Force said, yeah, no problem. Well, you go to the academy, we have a pre-dental major, you have to major in chemistry. We'll send you off to dental school, you'll be a dentist in the Air Force. Perfect. 18-year-old kid, sounds good. Started a major in chemistry, decided that college chemistry was quite a bit different from high school chemistry, and maybe that wasn't going to be such a good fit for me. And so changed my major to engineering. And loved engineering, decided that, okay, I'm not going to be a dentist now because I really don't like chemistry that much. And I looked around, most of the guys at the Air Force Academy were going to be pilots. I said, well, I think that maybe I'll just be a pilot then. That's how I made the decision to be an Air Force pilot. I'm 19 years old, and again, that's God's plan, all right? So, and that's opened up doors. It's opened up doors for a lot of things. It's opened up a door to speak to this group here. But anyway, so this is a G suit. This is what we call G suit. You put this on when you go fly, before you go fly. And I asked Cal too. I said, do I have to wear any special uniform or anything like that? So fortunately, he said, no, you can wear shorts and a t-shirt. So that's what I'm wearing. But you'd have a flight suit on. You put a G suit on. This hose here is will hook onto the airplane, to the pneumatic system of the airplane. And when you're flying, the airbags in the suit are going to expand, and they're basically going to squeeze your legs so that the blood doesn't flow down. So as you're pulling G, so a G force, we're all walking around at 1 G. G stands for gravity. When you take a hard turn in a car, you might pull a G and a half or maybe even 2 Gs. Okay, so at 2 Gs, your head weighs twice as much as what it does at 1 G. All right, the F-15 can pull 9 Gs. So when you're flying the F-15 and you're pulling 9 Gs, your hand weighs 9 times as much, your head weighs 9 times as much, your helmet that you have on weighs 9 times as much. And so and when you're fighting and you're pulling 9 Gs, you're also looking back behind you sometimes. Sometimes you're looking at the guy in front of you. But if you're doing defensive practice, then you're looking at the guy behind you. And, so that's why weightlifting was important and all that. But also all that blood is trying to get down to the bottom of your feet because of the G forces. You'll black out. So the G suit keeps you from blacking out. I have a whole devotion on that too, but we won't go with that. Brought some other props, just some things to think about, talk about. This is the helmet that I wore when I flew T-38s. So my Air Force career, I went through pilot training right after graduation at the academy, and I went to pilot training. After pilot training, I stayed there as an instructor for pilot training. I flew the T-38, which is a supersonic trainer. It's the second airplane that guys flew back then. It's different now, but that's the second airplane that guys flew back then. And then that's kind of the old-fashioned way. Then, of course, technology happens, and we get a lighter, better helmet. This is the helmet that I wore when I flew the F-15 and the A-37 and the A-10, which are the other 3 airplanes I flew in the military. So it doesn't, if you pick up both helmets, the difference in weight may not seem significant to you, but just a little bit of difference at 9 Gs. So every difference is multiplied by 9, okay, when you're pulling Gs. So it's pretty critical. And speaking of difference, these are bullets. This is a mock bullet. This is actually a real casing from the A-10 with a mock tip. But this is what most airplanes fire out of their gun. This is a 20 millimeter shell. This is what the F-15 fired. This is the size of the shell. The F-16, the F-18, the F-15, the F-4, most fighters. This is what the A-10 fires. This is 30 millimeter, 20 millimeter, 30 millimeter. And so I got this shirt for Father's Day this year. The first time I'm wearing it. But, my gun has a plane. So what they did for the A-10 is they decided what type of gun they wanted to have, and then they built an airplane around it. And that's a true story. So, yeah, so just kind of cool. So I'll leave those up for people to look at and touch if they want. Then I've written a couple books. And I thought, who's the youngest person here? Anybody under the age of 20? Yeah. Anybody else under the age of 20? All right. So you get this book. Yeah. This is a devotional book I wrote right after 9/11. So it's written a long time ago, probably before you were born, obviously. Okay. Just has about 30 devotionals in it based on my flying experiences, and it's actually not that great, but maybe it will be for you. I just reread it and thought I could do better, but there you go.
Thank you.
And then who's the oldest person here? Anybody? I don't even know where to start. Anybody? Let's start in there. Do we have anybody here in their 80s? There you go. 2 people in their 80s. All right, how old are you? 83. 83?
He's got it.
He's got it?
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, I didn't ask for 90s?
I'll be 92 in August.
92 in August.
Oh, that's impressive.
Okay. Way to go. So, yeah, my dad's 91. I usually have breakfast with my dad on Saturday mornings at 7 at the 76th Street truck stop. So yeah, you're just a little bit older than my dad. This is not a Christian book. This is a history book about the Battle Creek Air National Guard and the airplanes that we flew there. We just had a A-10 pilot reunion last year in July, and I was on the committee to get that together, and they said, Mike, why don't you just write up a quick history of the unit, like a one-page thing. Well, that ended up being a almost 300-page book. So we had a lot of good history, and I don't know if you'd enjoy it or not, but there you go, a little history.
I'm an English teacher and a history major.
Okay, I'm like super nervous now.
I know. Whenever I say an English teacher, then I say, don't worry, I say ain't just like you guys.
Okay. All right, well, you can read my my preface in there, which talks about my attitude towards history. And maybe you'll give me some grace and forgiveness on that. So my thing with history was, as I did the research, I came up with conflicting dates and some conflicting information. And I said, let's not worry about that too much. Let's worry about the bigger picture and the lessons we can learn from the bigger picture. So that's my attitude towards history. Okay. So, yeah. Like, did Columbus discover America? Okay. All right. Questions? Green?
Mike, when you took over in Battle Creek, you essentially had to come in and change a culture.
I did. It was a culture change.
What sort of challenges were you faced with when you brought that to the table? Were there some in the unit that didn't feel that they were part of the problem? And how did you kind of deal with the attitude?
Yep, definitely there were plenty in the room that felt like they weren't part of the problem, plenty in the room that had different ideas. So first of all, fighter pilots are all type A personality. They all want to be in charge. They all think they're smarter than everybody else, including the other fighter pilots. And so it's a tough group. So that is where you have to know what your principles are, and you have to tell those guys what the principles are. So I did. I didn't have that plaque back then, but I just spoke them. I said, this is what we're going to live by. And the decisions will be based on these principles. And in some cases, I had to get in people's face and tell them that they're not in charge, I'm in charge. And so it's going to be my decision, live or die. Appreciate your input. I'll take it into consideration. And everybody, including myself, is going to go through the rebluing, is what we called it. Even though you're my number one pilot, you're going to go through that too. He didn't think he was part of the problem. He wasn't. But he's going to go through it anyway. Sometimes I had to tell him that. You're not. You're not part of the problem. That's why I need you alongside of me to help me. You can bring them on board. Culture change was the term we used, myself and my boss. We're changing the culture because if we don't change the culture, we continue to have a culture that kills people unnecessarily. So did that answer the question? So, yeah, I definitely had to deal with that. It was a struggle.
Yeah, this is related to that same thing.
Yeah.
But you invited everyone to requalify.
I told them they had
That's a
to.
really popular thing to do, right?
Right.
Because you've got highly qualified people,
Oh,
type
yeah.
A personalities, one after another. You're saying, you know what, we're all starting over. All of us.
Yeah.
You gotta requalify. That's a rough thing to do, but it also applies to a lot of other industries. Like when you have to do a culture change,
Mm-hmm.
you have to really believe that that's the right thing to do and force everybody to start over.
Yeah.
It's a rough thing to do, but you did it.
Yeah. I think organizations over time can develop a bad culture. And if you have guys who have been doing a job for a long time, they get into a rut. Sometimes they get into an old way of doing stuff. In the fighter pilot business, there's a lot of technology change and there's a lot of tactics change. It's an ever-evolving thing. And so that was part of why we decided to do the rebluing, is because we had guys still doing things the old way. And we also had guys who flew the A37. We flew the A37 before the A-10. A37 was never going to go to combat, and it was a two-person airplane. A-10 was a single-person airplane. We were going to go to combat. And the technology was more. It was better technology. And so we had guys that didn't step it up when we went to the stepped-up airplane. And we had guys that were doing things an old way. Yeah, it was tough. So, yeah.
Yeah, well, thank you for being here, and I'm wondering, may we take a picture of your plaque afterward?
Yeah, sure. Yep.
But my question is, goes down your area of leadership vacuum, and I agree 100%. And especially in the church, I believe in too many situations we've gone woke in too many churches, and I am wondering, what would be your prescription for men in the church to step up as leaders? To be in this, your phrase went to war. I believe we are in war,
Yeah.
spiritually especially.
Yep. So I've been in leadership at a church. I've been president of council, president of elders. I've been a church administrator, volunteer church administrator, all at a church that I don't attend anymore. We've switched churches since then just because of geography. We moved and had to find a church that was a little bit closer to home. We're dealing with a leadership challenge at our current church that just came up this week that I can't talk about yet. And but it doesn't have anything to do with woke, or it just has to do with somebody that made a bad decision. I think so. That's kind of what led me to talk about what I talked about today. I think in the church we have to be willing to make those tough decisions. I think in church you have to be willing to say, even if you're on staff at church, you're a good person, but you're not the right person for this job. Sometimes you have to be able to fire somebody in a church environment or a not-for-profit environment. It's easy in a business environment because if there's somebody who's not doing their job, it's affecting the bottom line. I owned a business for a while as well with two other people. And so I've had to fire people. I've had to hire people, fire people. Typically I didn't fire people unless they had an addiction problem and they weren't willing to get help. Most of the time, I was able to facilitate some change and make things work. But I think you have to be willing to face those problems head on. I think so many times in a not-for-profit or church environment, we're afraid to make somebody mad. The Bible talks to us about holding each other accountable, but with Christian love. There's the challenge. How do you want to hold somebody accountable with Christian love? It's really easy in a business environment to tell somebody you need to let them go and not worry about it. In a church environment, I think you need to be very careful about how you do that. You still have to do it. You still have to hold people accountable. And what's our accountability in a church environment? It's God's word. Okay, so you need to know what God's word says. So one of my other statements is not a leadership statement, but one of my other favorite statements is know what you believe. More importantly, know why you believe that. So we probably represent however many different churches here. I don't know, all right? There are a ton of good churches in West Michigan. So what does your church believe? Why? So that goes to my story in Enid, Oklahoma. When I'm 23, I grew up in the Christian Reformed Church. Forgive me for that, okay? But we can joke about it. I attend a non-denominational church now. But as a kid that grew up in the Christian Reformed Church, I didn't really know about any other churches. And when we moved to Enid, Oklahoma, I looked for a Christian Reformed Church, and sure enough, there's not one there, okay? So you look for a Reformed, okay, what's the second best thing? A Reformed church, okay? Well, there's not one of those either. So, here we go. So my wife and I, we ended up, we lived in the backyard of a Wesleyan church. We could leave our house and walk to a Wesleyan church. We became really good friends with Max and Ruth Ann Kolaw. Max Kolaw was the minister at that Wesleyan church. Their kids babysat our kids. I'm still good friends with Max Kolaw. So anyway, long story short, we ended up joining the Wesleyan church, and Max Kolaw came over as we were getting ready to join, and he kind of interviewed us, talked to us about what's your faith like, and I'm 23, and what's your church? I said, well, I'm Christian Reformed, and he said, what's that? Right, exactly. I'm not in West Michigan anymore. I said, how can somebody not know what the Christian Reformed Church is? I mean, I grew up in Grand Rapids, Michigan, and I don't know if he really knew what it was or not, but it was an excellent question. What does the Christian Reformed Church believe? So I had to go through what I knew at 23, which wasn't that much, unfortunately. Okay, and so that's why I had to think about what did I believe and then why. Did I just believe it because my parents believed it? Okay, so I didn't really change any of my beliefs, but I just decided that I needed to know why. So I got into theology a little bit more and into God's Word more. So to answer your question, you have to be in God's Word. You have to know what your church believes and why. And then you can base your leadership on that and your accountability on that. So, okay.
Before you start, I just wanted 2 or 3 top highlights of your military career.
Highlights?
Yeah, top 2 or 3 things in your career that just jump out that really a big moment in your career. 2 or 3 things.
All right. 2003, our unit got deployed. So I put my retirement papers. So unexpectedly, I didn't do everything you need to do to get promoted to lieutenant colonel. And unexpectedly, I got promoted to lieutenant colonel. Okay. This is after I was a squadron commander, right at the end of it. So once you get promoted, if you want to retire at that rank, you have to stay in for 3 years. So, okay, I'm going to stay in for 3 years longer than I wanted to now. All right. So, and then I was flying for UPS commercially at the time. And I decided I didn't want to fly for UPS and fly for the Air National Guard at the same time. So my last year and a half in the Air National Guard, I didn't fly an airplane. I stopped flying. I just showed up for drill weekend. I was the Deputy Operations Group Commander, still kind of overseeing some flying operations. And then I was Special Projects Officer to the Wing Commander and did some things there. So our unit I had my retirement papers in February of 2003. Our unit got activated. We were 1 pilot short. We had some guys who, their wives were pregnant. They didn't want to go over to Kuwait. for Operation Iraqi Freedom and that sort of thing. So we were one short. So I said, hey, I'll go. You know, get me checked out in the airplane again and da-da-da. I said, no, we can't. We don't have time. And I said, okay, I'll go as a non-pilot. We always have to have somebody in the Combined Air Operations Center, which is called the KAOC. And I said, instead of rotating guys in and out of there, I'll just go there permanently and be the one guy there. You'll have a former commander who's there, a lieutenant colonel who's there, and somebody who's not career-oriented who's there. And that sounded good to everybody because it's not like the best duty. You're not flying an airplane. Usually guys went over for a week. So anyway, I spent the Operation Iraqi Freedom in the KAOC. I was the senior A-10 liaison officer to the general running the war. That entire experience actually didn't involve flying at all. Well, I mean, I mission planned, did all the initial mission planning for all the A-10 missions during Operation Iraqi Freedom. We flew 150 missions a day. I worked 12 to 20-hour days, 7 days a week for 3 months straight. I was exhausted. So one of the big things that we did was about, I don't know, a week or two into the war, General called me up and said, hey, Mike, what would it take to open up Toledo Air Base to have A-10s operate out of that? I said, sir, I don't know. I'll get back to you later today. I didn't even know where Toledo Air Base was. So I got the map out, looked at it. It's halfway. So our A-10s were operating out of Al Jaber Air Base in Kuwait. And halfway between there and Baghdad was an Iraqi air base called Toledo Air Base. So we had occupied that territory. So what the general wanted to do was he wanted to operate A-10s out of an Iraqi air base so that we would be closer to Baghdad and we could have more time over station when we were going to have to do the urban close air support over Baghdad later in the war. Very forward-thinking general. What's that? No, that's after. So I'm trying to think of the general's name right now and I can't. It's called old age. But anyway, so it turns out I did all the stuff, called him back. I said, here's what it would take, here's what it would gain us, time over Baghdad. It was all, anyway, we opened up Toledo Air Base. And our A-10 guys out of Battle Creek got selected to operate out of Toledo Air Base. I actually consider that probably my biggest accomplishment was getting Toledo Air Base open for A-10s to operate out of. And so our guys flew in there. The runways were bombed. We had to bring civil engineering in, do some repair. They had no running water, they had no electricity, and we operated A-10s out. Our maintainers, our maintenance guys that maintain the airplanes are awesome. They did that with no electricity. Yeah, I mean, you know, no running water. We maintained airplanes, operated airplanes. Eventually we got electricity, we got water there. But when we opened it up, we did not. That allowed us to spend probably 3 times as much time over Baghdad as what we were before. So that was kind of cool. I got to fly through the Grand Canyon at 500 miles per hour. That was kind of cool. I mean, that's just a fun thing. It's not anything, you know. But I always, you know, I've flown around Mount Rushmore and some other things that, you know, I just think they're cool. Had foreign students when I was an instructor in pilot training. That was fun. Had a foreign student from Belgium. Had a student from Saudi Arabia. That was interesting. A Muslim student who decided that when he was in America, he didn't need to be Muslim, so he went crazy, off the rails almost. Bought a sports car and wine, women, and everything. Like, okay, calm down a little bit.
So to bookend, I mean, when you were up there, you first mentioned a question about dropping bombs and shooting guns. So basically, you know, while you were there providing air support, one of my best friends, our friends, was a tank commander, same mission.
Yep.
What was one of the missions that you or the pilots that you remember that was providing support to the troops on the ground? What's one of the best stories that you've got, or?
Okay, it wasn't my mission. My best story isn't my mission. So I did very little bomb dropping.
Okay.
I have combat time over the former Yugoslavia and over Iraq, but I have very few awesome stories about that. But the most awesome story that I know of is Dave Kennedy, who's no longer living. He was a Battle Creek A-10 guy. He's the guy that challenged me on the culture thing, and he's a very good pilot. We had some serious words, but he was a good friend of mine. But so Dave had a brain aneurysm and died. But Dave Kennedy, he's on a close air support mission. They're supporting a unit on the ground, and they're talking to him on the radio, and the ground commander says, hey, we have a sniper nailing us down. He's on the 3rd floor, 7th window in from the north. Can you take him out? There's only one airplane that can do that. It's the A-10. Okay. So Dave put 30 millimeter bullets, 3rd floor, 7th window in from the north, filled that window with 30 millimeter bullets, took the sniper out. Every other airplane, I have another t-shirt that says we fly slow, start running.
Yeah.
So,
I like that.
every other airplane's flying too fast to do that. You could hit that building, okay? You couldn't hit the 3rd floor, 7th window in. And that video was on CNN. So there was an embedded CNN reporter with that ground troop. He videoed that, and that night we watched it on CNN. And I said, oh, that's Dave Kennedy. That's, I knew that was his mission. I had kind of pre-planned that mission. The other thing was the very first mission that we started the war with was in support of the Navy SEALs, and it was in the Arabian Gulf. We were going to secure the oil wells that were in the Arabian Gulf, because in the first Gulf War, Saddam had opened those up and destroyed them. So we were going to secure them to make sure that they were okay. And so we're going to do that in support of the Navy SEALs. So the A-10s are going to provide air support for the Navy SEALs. So I found the Navy SEAL room. I knocked on the door. They have their own room. And this guy with a big bushy beard says, yeah. I said, hey, I'm Lieutenant Colonel VanLaan. I'm here to talk to somebody about the Arabian Gulf mission that's going off tomorrow. Opens the door, I come in. I'm a big guy, Lieutenant Colonel. I outrank everybody in the room. I am totally intimidated. Okay, the Navy SEALs, it's the first time I had worked with the SEALs. The Navy SEALs are something else, all right? You just know when you walk in the room, like, these guys are special. And so I decided to drop my rank at that point. I said, hey, I'm Mike VanLaan. I said, I'm looking for the guy who's going to be in charge of the mission in the Arabian Gulf tomorrow, because we're going to provide air support for you guys. And so, like, when I walked in, everybody stopped what they were doing and they looked at me like, what are you doing in our room? And so anyway, that broke the ice. As soon as I told them I was an A-10 guy, they all went back to work. The one guy said, hey, I'm the guy you need to talk to. I like that story too, whoever asked me that. But, again, it didn't really have anything to do with me, but that was a very successful mission too, and that worked out fine.
Celebrate your victories. Right?
Celebrate your victories. You're paying attention. Good. All right.
All right.
8 o'clock.
8 o'clock. Well done.
Perfect.
Hold on. What's the fastest you've ever gone?
Mach 2.0 in the F-15, and I told you earlier, I just did it. I did it. We didn't normally fly around at Mach 2.0. I also went up to 51,000 feet, because anything above 50,000 is considered space. So I just wanted to go into space and say I went into space. Okay, it's not really going into space, but I mean technically it is. But anything above, so yeah, I went up to 51,000 one day.
What's the highest you've ever flown? 51,000. Really? Just so you could do it?
Yeah. Common theme.
Oh, one other thing I was going to ask you. Oh, you had a full ride scholarship to where?
Harvard. So.
Oh, yeah, kind of smart.
Yeah, smart.
So you want me to tell that story?
Tell it because
Okay.
It's awesome.
Okay. So I'm a senior at East Kentwood High School. Again, my parents didn't have a lot of money. Decent football player, decent student. my football coach comes up to me one day and says, hey, the Harvard football coach is going to be in Grand Rapids and he wants to meet with 3 players from this area that he's interested in having come to Harvard. You're one of them. I said, okay. And he said, you're going to have lunch with him at the University Club, downtown Grand Rapids, and you need to wear a suit. I said, okay. So I found, this is before cell phones, before GPS, you know, you had to find out where the University Club was in downtown Grand Rapids because I had no idea. And my dad helped me, you know, hey, this is, you know, anyway. And the only suit I owned was a baby blue leisure suit that my mom made for me. Okay? So 70s, you gotta think 70s. Baby blue leisure suit wasn't that far off from normal, all right?
Cool, baby.
Yeah. And again, you know, we didn't have a lot of money in the family I grew up in. We weren't poor, but we weren't, I mean, we just didn't go out to eat. If we did go out to eat, we went to Bonanza Steakhouse, all right? The buffet and everything. And so I wore my baby blue leisure suit to the University Club, downtown Grand Rapids. I showed up. There were 2 other high school players, probably from East Grand Rapids and one of the Forest Hills schools, you know, the Ritchie schools. And the football coach was there. And I was the only person without a tie on with my baby blue leisure suit. And they had way too many forks on the table. Okay, I had never been anywhere with more than 1 fork on the table. I think there were 3 forks, 2 or 3 spoons, and a couple knives. All right, I had never seen more than 1 fork, 1 spoon, 1 knife. So I just kind of watched what people were doing and kind of followed them and figured it out. It's not that hard. And they actually had a lesson on that at the Air Force Academy, by the way. You know, how to proper table etiquette and all that. But I got back from the luncheon. I liked the coach. And then my football coach, my high school football coach said, well, how'd it go? I said, I think it went okay. I said, but I'm not going to go there. And he goes, why not? I said, there were too many forks on the table. So I made a decision not to go to Harvard based on forks. Okay? So they did offer me a combined academic football scholarship for 4 years. And so you know, again, what is God's plan for you? Okay, God's plan was not for me to go to Harvard and to be a lawyer, all right? Or whatever I would have been. I don't know what I would have been if I would have gone to Harvard. I would not have been a pilot. I was actually, I told Cal, I said, humbly, I was a really good pilot. And not because of anything I did, but that's the gift that God gave me. That was, we all have a calling to do something. I hope you all can find it or have found it. But my calling was to fly airplanes. And I was good at it. I enjoyed it. It was, again, just a blessing to be able to do that for a career. I didn't really enjoy flying for UPS, but I enjoyed the military flying. Okay, I mean, I liked flying for UPS, but it wasn't the love that I had for the military flying. That was my calling. That's what God, I think, wanted me to do during my earthly time here, you know, in my broken life. But yeah, so I didn't go to Harvard, and I'm okay with that. So
I like that
okay.
you said you're a little bit smart.
Okay.
Yeah, a little bit smart. So thanks for coming. Somebody I got to thank for being here. It's Bill Quinlan from Sherpa Leadership Group. Elevate your business, elevate your story. If you need a business elevated, your story elevated, there's your guy right there. And he's actually going to be our speaker in October. So how about you said yes?
I don't have to follow this.
You don't have to follow him,
Oh.
so don't worry about it. Yeah, we have Brian Ellerby will be here in September. So yeah, whoever's coming next, yeah, you gotta follow that one. So hey, fellas, thanks for coming out. Great morning again, and appreciate you all being here. How about a nice round of applause?